Hello and welcome to this Red Monk conversation. My name is Kate Holterhoff, Senior Analyst at Red Monk, and with me today I have Martin Rojas, UI Architect at PlayOn Sports and ReactATL Organizer. Martin, thanks so much for joining me on the MonkCast.
Thank you, Kate, for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, super excited to talk to Martin. So Martin and I both live in Atlanta, and we run into each other not only at the sort of local meetup scene, but also at a lot of the big conferences that focus on the front end community. So I want to start with your role as part of the React Atlanta group. Can you talk about what that is and what purpose it serves in the community?
Of course, it actually was very interesting that I kind of was thrust upon me at the beginning of the pandemic. Naya, the previous organizer, had to leave Atlanta for some serious reasons, so I was kind of thrust into doing this work after only volunteering a couple times right as the pandemic started. So I had to kind of figure it out on the fly. We ended up doing a lot of Zoom meetups and that kind of stuff, and was able to keep it going through the pandemic. And as I did that, I kind of saw the value of a lot of people that were shifting careers, that were kind of trying to find that community. And to me, that's what the biggest thing is, right? There's a lot of people that will reach out when they're in the middle of a job transition, or they are, they're trying to figure out what their next steps are, right? Where they should be working towards, or maybe they've been stuck at mid-level of their career, and they don't know how they can get to that next step, what they should be learning. So from that, it's been really kind of rewarding and interesting in hearing a lot of different perspectives where people have been coming from, the kind of work that they do and what they're encountering.
And so you were involved pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, or did you just get involved more recently?
It was actually, I had reached out a few months before the pandemic and had done my first talk because I was like, man, I'm a senior. I want to kind of share back to the community. I never came out, so I had done one talk that I really enjoyed it. So I had reached out to the organizer at that time, and I'm like, hey, what can I do to help? How can I be more involved? And I helped in a couple more meetups, and then she's like, hey, I need to, go back to Canada, go back home, and you want to take it over?
And you said yes?
Like, yeah, sure. I'll give it my best shot.
I love that. Okay, so you were all in. And so you've seen it before the pandemic and after the pandemic. I'm interested in what you're seeing there because I know the meetup scene, the conference scene really took a hit during the pandemic. And in Europe, it's back up. I'm hearing sort of mixed accounts about the US conference scene. What are you seeing around meetups? Do you see that attendance is back where it was pre-pandemic? Have things changed? Like, what's a pulse check?
It's definitely coming back. I think people have been coming back this year a lot more. Uh, it's a very different kind of vibe for people who are coming out, right? In a good way or bad way, pre-pandemic or even during the pandemic, it was a lot more of people that were, hey, I'm just starting, or I'm switching careers, or I'm switching this. I think in the last probably 6 months, we are seeing a lot more of people that are already working start coming out, because there's a lot of things kind of changing, and a lot of them are, same thing. A lot of people come out when they've been laid off and are looking for jobs and are looking for in there.
Yeah.
But it's not always that was the only time before where you would see people mid-career seniors really come out. Now I think that when you're posting topics about some of the new technologies, things are going so quickly that people are feeling like there's a lot they need to keep up with, or they need to do to not get left behind, right? AI, of course, being the big key term there, being in there and knowing how they can use it to understand it. There's so much to kind of drink from a fire hose on that point.
Wow, that's so interesting. So your take is that there is more interest in the meetup scene because things are moving so quickly around AI. Do you think that's tied to, we've heard a lot of rumblings that folks are losing their jobs, hiring is frozen. I tend to blame that more on the sort of post-ZERP era that we're in. I hear a lot about offshoring. So I'm not ready to point my finger at AI. However, maybe you are. Like, what is your sense? Do you see the relationship of hiring around developers to be reflected in attendance at the meetup that you run?
Um, in a way, and because of before, even during the pandemic or before or after, if you had a developer, you already had a career, you were pretty safe in knowing that, hey, if I get laid off or something, in a month, I'll probably have a job. May not be the best job, but I can pick up something, right? I think everybody's been seeing that, oh, it may take 6 months to a year to find that career. So everybody's being like, okay, I need to start laying groundwork, or I need to keep my options open because I don't know what's going to happen and I can't like start from zero. So it's driving a lot of people to reach out and to start building those networks.
That makes sense. All right. And I guess before we move on to talking about some of the more technical subjects that I'm hoping we'll get to here, do you have any advice for other folks who are in the meetup space, that run a meetup and that are, or maybe thinking about becoming involved in one?
I mean, one of the biggest things, if you're looking to get involved, a lot of the people that are running the meetups are because they just kept showing up. It is a lot of work. It's in there. It's a lot of different skills. And it came out to us that us being able to share that load makes it so much easier and less of a burnout, where we can have consistent, we've now been able to do almost 2 years of a monthly meetup. And there's been, at least monthly, but every other month, but we don't have to all plan. We don't have to all be looking for people. Sometimes I've had sometimes where my personal life is kind of caught up, and there's been like 2 months where I've been able to just step back and it still keeps going, right?
Yeah.
It still keeps going. So finding those crossroads, we haven't given up the identity of our meetups. We are just like, and we always tell people, hey, we're working together. Just being honest, we're working together. If you follow one of us, you're following all of us. So everybody kind of gets found out, gets notified. You get a lot more people out.
Got it. Okay. That helps me. All right. So let's talk a little bit about what you're doing at PlayOn Sports, because what is very interesting to me about your role is that, you are working as a UI architect. Spend a lot of my time thinking about what it is that designers, that UX engineers, and that the front end are seeing in our current moment. How is that affecting how we use CMSs? How is that affecting, just the way that we are using vibe coders? Like, talk to me about what you're doing at PlayOn Sports that is teasing out that this recent relationship between AI and the UI, the front end.
We have a new CTO, and he's really a big proponent of the guild framework for our group. So we're building out a lot of guilds. One of the main ones, and is really big in being a big push, is an AI guild. But one of the more interesting things is that it's not just a guild inside of the technology organizations. It's something that is being open. We're sort of creating it as a way to share the knowledge that we've been building up as we've been learning about AI inside a technology group to our entire company, right? We're launching it to be a point so that we are creating, a person in our AI guild, she's the head of learning for the entire company. So our hope is that as she's doing trainings in a lot of different parts of it, she does leadership training, she does that, AI alert trainings will start becoming part of it so that they'll be available to everybody in the company, right? Also, marketing, sales, they're all looking at AI tools to help their work go faster or work better, but they may not have the experience of knowing what questions they should be asking vendors or knowing if they're missing something. So the way we're building the guild is that we'll have we'll have our experts, we'll have our point. We have legal as part of it. We have security, and they know that they just have one, I'll be the main point of contact, but they can reach out to me or to the guild. We have a Slack channel being like, hey, I'm trying to use this tool. Can you help me be that like supporter? Help me make sure I'm asking the right questions, that I'm not going to get caught up in there. We've created sort of a evaluation framework of like when a business director or manager is looking at in there, sort of kind of a checklist that they can go down and be like, oh, this is what I was looking for. This is what I should be aiming to do in this like POC stage or in my first rollout or for rollout wide, to make sure that we're not trying to build something that is not actually going to do what we want it to do, waste money, because that's something with AI, right? It can looks really nice, looks really cool, but it may not actually move the needle on what we're trying to do as a company as a whole, right? In the company objectives. So.
And for folks who aren't familiar with the guild system, it sounds very Dungeons and Dragons. Can you define that for us?
The idea of a company guild is sort of creating focus groups. So whether they are management guild or, in this case, an AI guild, it's sort of to create a framework where you can have your own meetings, you can create learnings, people can bring it up. It's a way of kind of showing like, hey, if you're interested in this topic or in this is the space where we are going to help you expand that knowledge in there. And of course, it can, depending on the amount of effort you're putting in there, it can be a lot more than that, right? It can be a management build, can be something as like, hey, in this guild, we're going to be doing a book club on like management, a management book, and we'll kind of describe it. Or if somebody has learned something and they want to do a presentation, it creates kind of that framework for that. And in there, so they can be as defined as, as structured as we're going with the AI guild, but it gives you something that you can attach kind of those responsibilities to. You can have more of a core group, think it almost like a employee group. It's loose, but the idea is that it provides a space where you can, have documentation, get resources, and allow employees, if they're interested in learning something, to know how they can look at when those resources exist within a company.
I love that idea. Okay, so that makes a lot of sense to me. So it's like a continuous learning, you get some community, provides documentation so that folks who maybe aren't a member can then, look over and say, hey, what are they doing over there? That's great. Yeah, okay. So there's an AI guild, you're learning a lot, and you're leading this guild, is that right?
I've been given the opportunity and given the time in my work to make this be about half of my 50% of my work, which at first I was like, oh, wow, this is, I was like, is it really going to take this time? But as we more roll that out, I'll be in there because it was giving me the time to reach out to different parts of the company. One of them, when I was working with our internal communication person and we're trying to figure out how to publicize it, how to roll it out, one of her comments from like a non-technical perspective is like, oh, well, if I see something AI, I'm going to think that has nothing to do with me, right? That's a product, that's engineering, that has nothing to do with me. So it was very interesting, very different perspective. So in same thing, in being able to reach out outside of the engineering and product organization, it's helping me shape how I do the message and allow it to tell, and making sure the message is clear that you don't have to have any knowledge in there as long as you're interested. You're welcome, and we will help you learn and become like, we have these, I created this term called AI champions, right? So any department, if you're interested, you want to be a point of contact for me to help, to know like, hey, you're really interested in AI, and there's somebody that if I find some, some good resources or a good online conference or something like that, I can send to you and you are more receptive to that. So it creates that. So it's like you're not taking fully all of your time, but you're a little bit more interesting. It's helping me create that kind of link and flow back and forth.
That's so exciting. Okay. Yeah, I think we hear a lot about the CEO who just like late at night sent a Slack message to someone in engineering and being like, hey, can't we just automate this role? Or, these are all these stereotypes about folks who are sort of undereducated about AI, treating it as this magic wand that's going to solve all their woes, to continue the Dungeons and Dragons metaphor. And it sounds like what you're doing, though, is totally different from that, where it's like the leadership has said, hey, we're going to make this an organization-wide initiative in order to incorporate AI in a thoughtful way that is bringing in a lot of, stakeholders and making sure that we're doing this in a way that makes the most sense for our particular use cases. And I love that. That's great.
Right, and it is, and it's actually AI is such a good fit for what what we PlayOn Sports we do in there. So context, we work with high school sports nationwide, right? We work with their athletic departments, we work with coaches, we work with students, we do ticketing, streaming, and all of that. And as sports fans, kind of what we want to do is we want to be able to bring as much of the stuff you see on like an MLB broadcast or that you see on a college level broadcast that has a lot of work onto it. We want to be able to offer that at high school level, right? So we'll be when we do a live stream, we'll be streaming every Friday night for football, for Friday Night Lights, we'll be streaming over 5,000 live streams, right? There's no way you can do the manual parts that you see in a broadcast in there. So AI is a perfect use case where it's not really taking anyone's job and things like that. But if we can figure out the right way to frame it and do it, we can provide so much more for for the high schools and the parents and everybody that's watching. We can give them so much more.
And can you talk a little bit about specifics there? Like, how are you leveraging AI as part of your operations?
Yes, some of the things and some of the goals in there, we're trying to find a good balance on if you're watching the games, you're interested in following, you're a grandparent, you're there, you're following your kid, you want to see, our goal is to be able to create highlights and be like, hey, my son was a player, I want to see his highlights for the game, right? I want to be able to create highlights for the game. Want to create, those recaps, those highlights. If same thing nationwide, a lot of people, what were those really good plays that happened over the weekend, right? Like you see ESPN has those like 10 top highlights. We're doing that. It's a little more manual in there. Like if we can leverage AI to find those great moments, like so many awesome opportunities and things that happened throughout throughout a Friday night and so many nationwide. If we can find those awesome things and bring them up and highlight them, it helps everybody, helps the player, helps the community that's finding them. So that's one of the things that we're kind of working and trying to find it. Also in same thing, creating great articles of post games, like post game recaps.
Okay.
So it's same thing. It's a lot of the content you expect and you see after games happening, but because of the volume and coaches are honestly under so much things going on in there, and even getting players looked up. We've been playing and in being able to you have a roster printed out, being able to just take a picture and have all that data inputted into creating the rosters, right?
I see. Okay, that makes sense. All right.
So yeah, it's a lot of automations and a lot of things that just helps the coaches just manage that entire thing.
Got it. So would they upload? I'm trying to think of, this is still a little hand wavy for me. So you're uploading the roster, and then would it be like the transcript of the entire game, and then it would pick the highlights out from there? I'm trying to understand how it would pick the highlights specifically.
The roster stuff that happens more at the beginning of the season, right? When you have your team and things set up. But like same thing, you're doing this as school starting up. You have so many. You're a coach or an athletic director. You may have like 5 or 10 teams, and you're trying to set up all that correctly. You have a printed list out that you may have made in Excel or something, or you have written out by hand. OCR is so good at being able to take that handwriting and turn it into text, and then you get a first pass, and then you can look at it and essentially helps you get 90% of the way there, right? With AI, it gets you 90% of the way, and then that way it's just cleaning up, making sure the player spells his card correctly. But it helps that initial setup of a team as the year's starting so much easier for the coaches, right? Those are some things that AI can really help out with.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I know one of the use cases that I love is, frankly, around this podcast, where it'll take the transcript and then summarize it into the abstract. I mean, that is amazing, because that for me was always the bottleneck. I said what I said. I don't feel like going over this again. And I'm thinking that maybe there's something similar if you're dealing with broadcast, but it sounds like that's not quite the use case that you have right now.
It's one of the problems we're figuring out to solve of how can we take that video feed and create that like summary.
Yeah. Yeah.
Same thing. If in MLB, in the professional games, they have somebody that is creating that like transcript of the game by hand and doing that, it would be impossible to do that for every high school,
Oh, yeah.
on the time. So that's a perfect use case for AI.
Okay. All right. So things coming down the road in that case. And you're not using the AI models that can manipulate video. That's not part of it.
It's one of the options we're looking at, right?
Okay.
So
yeah.
I mean, we're looking at LMs. The only one that can do video is Gemini at the moment.
Okay, great.
So that is the only true multimodal LLM that's right now.
Yes.
So it is one of them. Same thing. Because of the scale and the volume, it's in trying to find what AI is good at which part of it, right? You don't want to just throw 3 hours of video to it and then like at a time. It's like what kind of pre-processing we can do, what kind of cleanup, and to make sure we get that like that really good area. So it's some of the things we're definitely evaluating a whole bunch of different processes and ideas, and things honestly all the way from getting just the scoreboard, getting the score accurately, right, for the game. We have so many different ways that people are connected to us or sending us information. Sometimes the scores don't line up quite right. And one of the things we can do is like from the video, can we do that OCR on the video and get the score out?
Got it. At many companies, their first AI project is a chatbot. Do you have a chatbot?
I think we do have for some of our customer ticketing support. We have some AI has been implemented into that. So same thing. One of the things that we're really focusing on is what makes sense to build versus buy. That's one of the making sure we're getting good ROI in everything we do, right? Do we get a benefit of buying it versus building it, and where's that business advantage, right? Where do we put our resources?
And are you using one model above all others? Are you, an open AI shop, a Claude shop?
Not at the moment. We are open, and I think our guidance has been is like we want to use what's the best at the moment to solve our problems. So yeah, we're definitely like experimenting, looking at it, and if this is the best model for this week, and next week another one comes along. One of the kind of guidance that I'm trying to push out is that we need to build with the eye that the model that you're using should be able to change every week if needed.
Okay.
Right. And everything else that you built around it should not be relying on building things specific for a model.
Okay. And last question, and then we can move on. But are you leaning towards a serverless solution, getting your GPUs from the cloud, or are you leaning towards self-hosting, using maybe even an open source model?
We go back and forth, and it's too early to say. It's too early to say because, and same thing, it depends on the problem, right?
Sure. Yeah.
The things we're doing with video and things like that, some things we may end up doing locally. It may make sense to get some hardware to do it, but a lot of other things are on demand, and you kind of get that like cloud. Like we're a cloud shop, right? So that's our kind of first solution for things. But if there is definitely an advantage, we're not ruling out anything.
Okay. So Martin does a lot of amazing articles on LinkedIn. And so, I know you've written a little bit about Microsoft NL Web. You've written about Google's Gemini chatbot. So I get the sense that you are testing out different solutions in this space. And, even reading some of the academic articles, like some of the Apple researchers. So I will be very interested to hear how this story develops and what you alight on and what use cases you discover. Because, well, I mean, I'll say that I've been having a lot of conversations around the AI code review tools. So that is particularly interesting, especially for the developers at PlayOn Sports, that there's these use cases that are going to be valuable to them. And maybe they're going to want their own ChatGPT subscriptions or Claude subscriptions to use as part of maybe their IDEs. Whereas, yeah, for the chatbot, maybe you'd want a completely different solution on-prem or elsewhere.
No, and that's exactly right. Like we have been using some of those tools. We're evaluating. We're even looking at like even the developer tools, right? Which one is in there? We're in the process of evaluating them and trying to figure out which works. And one of the things we said from the beginning, it may be that one tool may work really well for our front-end developers. Another tool may work a lot better for our cloud engineers or back-end developers. So it's same thing. It's finding the right tool for the right position and not trying to shoehorn something in that works, try to make it work badly for everybody, right?
It never works. The developers are going to use the tools that make sense to them. You can try to talk to them from a top-down positioning, but at the end of the day, they're going to be only leveraging the things that actually work.
Right. So the goal that that we have is that it's in kind of like being open with developers and being like, hey, if you're looking at a tool, you need to make sure that what you're doing is not sharing company information. You're taking care of PII. So kind of instructing them on the things that really end up mattering and that would be a problem if they didn't get out, to make sure that they're aware of that so that if they're looking at a tool, they can do that evaluation.
All right. So we talked about AI. I want to talk about front end too, because I know that you have some opinions about React 19. You have some on micro front ends. What are you following in the front end space on the top of the stack, client side? What is it that concerns you right now? And give us some of your hot takes on that.
Yeah. I think it's one of the, React 19, really what that brought was all the SSR, server side rendering, and that's kind of shift back and forth. That's something that we do have, and we've implemented a lot into our things, and kind of seeing how that works in all Next.js as well as in other frameworks, because SSR really, it's same thing with everything, is finding when does it make sense. To have servers, you go back into having to have load balancing, having to pay for that you didn't have to do when things were done client side, right? If you're doing a client side or an SPA app, you just had to have a S3 bucket, and that was all the server, headaches that you had, right? Everything's in the API. Now you're back to having to have a server. You may get too much traffic, your server gets bottlenecked and all that stuff. But that's where you need to do, to me, SSR is if you have SEO requirement, whether it's Google SEO search, or even now with the AIs doing the scraping, they're not reading they're not loading up your JavaScript. So they're just looking at what your HTML is. And that even goes back into accessibility. Like accessibility now takes a much bigger term, and I've even started bringing back the term semantic web. I don't know if you remember, that was when HTML5 came out, and the reason for HTML5.
Oh, wow.
But the whole purpose of semantic web was that you needed to make your HTML code make sense from just the tags or the way that you organize it and laid it out. And it turns out that LLMs are now your readers, and that means your website needs to make semantic sense in just the HTML. You can't rely on waiting for JavaScript to load to make it make sense, or even the visuals. They're not even looking at the visuals. That's expensive to render.
That's exciting. Okay, so PlayOn Sports is a Next.js shop that you're saying. That's what you say. We
have a lot of different things.
Oh, okay.
So we are using Nuxt, we're using Next, we're using React Native. So it's given me a chance to really touch on everything. And same thing, and we're, in some of our tools, they're gotten big enough that we're getting to the point of thinking about micro front ends and how do we do that kind of work.
That was a wonderful segue. Let's hear your take on micro front ends. I mean, that's a big buzzword these days.
Yes. It's something we've been going in there. Has been going back and forth, and I've gotten the opportunity to talk to people at the Zephyr Cloud, Luca, the person that wrote the book on in there, and my personal takeaway, and from seeing other talking to other developers that have implemented in other companies, is that micro frontends is solving the same problem of microservices, right? You're wanting to have your teams. It's a people problem. It's not a technical problem, right? From
Yeah.
a technical perspective, is module federation and and those or monoliths are all configuration changes. They're build changes. They're not necessarily code changes. And I think that's been one of the biggest things that I've been able to share with my leadership, and we have taken, they've taken up, but they listen, and we're in a good process of doing that. Is that this is a technical solution for a people problem, right? Micro front ends make sense when you have teams that need to ship things at different speeds, right? In the research, and I think is when you have with that mindset that is how you're going to break up your front end. It's like, hey, this is the work that this team needs to do, and this is where the box is. Then it becomes a solution that can scale. But if you don't have your product, or you don't have design buy-in and be part of that breakup, it becomes a problem, because they'll want to do, oh, but I want this team to do something in this part of the page. Well, that's another module. So now they're back to being linked, and you can't deploy one without deploying the other one, and you're back to where you started, which is kind of what tends to happen, right? That's from the tech leads at other companies that have tried to roll it out and bringing it back. A lot of that seems to be the problem, that they draw the boxes, they break up the code, but then the next feature that comes along will just start linking things back up again. So they're back to where we started. They're in worse, because now they're doing, to deploy in one part, it's not just deploying the big front end. They have to do 3 different deployments, right? One of the things that I've kind of brought up is that micro front ends doesn't get rid of the complexity. It just takes it away from the developers and puts it on the managers and the business leaders. So if they're not willing to take on and figure out those, like, now dependencies have to be worked out by the Scrum leader, the product owner, and the UX. So it's not the developers that are trying to make sure those dependencies are aligned, but they have to be done by your product leadership. Your tech leadership, your engineering manager now has to solve those problems. So it's that whole process of shifting left.
I like that. I think you put that really well, and that's a really helpful description. And so, to be clear, at PlayOn Sports, like AI, you are thinking about it. You are considering micro front ends, but you're not using them currently.
We are actually, so we are same thing. We took this as a project, and we're like, okay, in order to do this, we need to make sure our automation is up to par, because same thing, the second we quote unquote flip the switch.
Yeah.
It's you're going from one deployment to 20, 10, 20 deployments, or it could be as many teams as you're willing to bring on. So if you don't have your automation that you can be safe of, like, essentially I hit deploy and it deploys, it runs all the tests, and I am 90% confident that what I deployed doesn't crash, it's good. So we have been doing the cleanup. We have been getting our testing strategy, trying to make sure, like, okay, now if we're going to be doing it in different teams, what does that testing look like? So we have been doing all the work, and like I said, to turn on, we've moved into a mono repo. We're figuring out what parts make sense to break up code. We've already had some of the new features that we're implementing. We're already implementing them in different kind of folders, and they've gotten comfortable that they're technically deploying already, even though it's not like module federation.
Mm-hmm.
We do have some micro front ends where it's one team, they're doing the work entirely separately. And when they're ready to deploy, they can deploy. They're still deploying the entire application, but they're deploying, right? So in a way, that's a micro front end. We're already kind of behaving. we've been doing a lot of feedback of what learnings they've been doing as they've been doing that work to make sure that as we kind of keep rolling it out and keep making a stronger shell and all the kind of services that we need, we are ready to do that. To me, they like turning on module federation is almost the last step. It's that old DevOps things, like it can still be a micro front end work if any team at any point can be like, oh, deploy, and the pipeline, the build pipeline just takes it and deploys it. And if you can do 10, 20 deploys a day and everybody's working independently and can launch it, that's a micro front end. And then it becomes trivial to suddenly deploy it with module federation.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying. All right. I love this. It's been such a great conversation. I'm going to wrap us up here. Before I do, how can folks hear more from you? Are you particularly active on any social channels? And are you planning to speak anywhere in 2025?
I'm in LinkedIn. I think the best plug that I can do is Meetup. If you look at ReactATL.
Yes.
In the personal, I do have a blog where I kind of put my thoughts. Just as next steps that dev. Same thing. It's next steps because I always found like a gap in everything was a lot of tutorials or white papers. So I'm trying to write blogs where I'm not really covering like brand new stuff, but things like I'm a developer or I may have heard about AI, and that's like that next thing. So.
That's a really great idea. I like that. Yeah, you're totally right. It's either like hello world or it's so in the weeds as you're reading the documentation. Yeah, I think that's a good place to be, devoting some effort into thinking through how to help folks. Amazing. Okay. Well, I have really enjoyed speaking with you, Martin. Again, my name is Kate Holterhoff, Senior Analyst at RedMonk. If you enjoyed this conversation, please like, subscribe, and review the MonkCast on your podcast platform of choice. If you're watching us on RedMonk's YouTube channel, please like, subscribe, and engage with us in the comments.